Okay, everybody. We're ready?
Can we throw away old homeworks?
Yeah, just make sure I have it in the grade book correctly. Questions on the homework? Go ahead.
16.
Number 16. What does number 16 say? Is it just from
X squared minus 16x
plus 51?
Mm-hmm.
Did I write that down correctly? Okay, and we just want to factor it? All right, so again, when we're factoring, we want to make sure we're going a little bit quicker. Is that all right? Go a little quicker on these. So you want to think, you can't see the factors of 51 right away. A lot of times 51 is one of those where you're like, what goes into 51? Well, 1 times 51, 3 times what? 17. Is that right?
Yeah.
4, 5, 6, 7. All right, so quick question. So 3 times 17? Yeah, this one's got to be prime because that would be the only factor I think would work. So this one will not be factored out because I can't factor it. So if this was a solving problem like this, what would you know to do? What was the algebra one that you would know to do?
X is equal to negative b plus or minus a square.
Oh.
B squared minus 4ac.
Oh.
All over the food.
All right. So that one's prime. So we didn't have to solve it. I was just putting. What would we do if I had that? What else? Yeah. What does it say? Okay. All right. First thing I would recognize on this one is I have a greatest common factor. Do you agree with that so far, everybody?
Yes, sir.
And it looks like I would factor a -2 out of everything to get me that. Do you agree? Because I changed all the signs and a -2 came out.
Yeah.
Okay, so the -2 is part of the factoring. If I was solving this, though, the -2 wouldn't interfere with what my solutions would be. And then I need to look at this and say, okay, well, what two numbers are multiply to give me 2, add to give me 3, and it would just be as simple as that, and we're done. So the whole thing is your answer.
10.
10? What does it say?
Describe the mistake in the following.
Oh, okay, I gotta look at that then. Number 10, describe the mistake. Oh, okay. 2 squared equals x squared plus 4. All right, the mistake is this. You cannot distribute this here and here. This means that I have x plus 2, and then if I FOIL that out, I get x squared plus 4x plus 4. That's it. So the mistake was the distributing of that. What else? Yeah?
28.
28. What does it say?
Negative x squared plus 13x minus 12 equals 0.
Equals 0. Okay, this one we're solving because it's equal to 0. I don't like having a negative as that lead term, so there's a number of things you could do with this if you wanted to. I might multiply everything by -1. Okay, so that's going to give me x squared minus 13x plus 12 equals 0 because I can't have a -0, right? And then let's take a look. What two numbers would multiply together to give me 12, add together to give me -13? It's the closest factors. -12 and -1. These are equal to 0, so solve this as 12. Solve this as 1.
Question. So the negative and positive outside the brackets are. So like, it's -12.
So because I multiplied everything by -1 first, I eliminate that whole thought. If this was a factoring one, I would have pulled the negative out front first and changed all the signs and then factored it. Because I don't like this term to be negative. So by default, our answer's going to be the exact same. Okay? So what it probably would have came down was one of these would have been negative and it would have worked out. Cool? Anything else you'd like to see? 33? Can you tell me what that says? 3a squared equals 27a. Okay. Tardy and tardy.
Tardy.
Tardy. And oh, dude, it's an empty bag though. You brought me an empty bag. I'm kidding. We'll call you guys the Tardy Boys. Of course, you're too young to probably know that there was a series called the Hardy Boys.
You're too young.
Whoops. All right. We want to solve this. 3a squared minus 27a equals 0. What did I do there? I just subtracted. Then, do I have a greatest common factor on the left?
3.
I have a 3. What else?
An A.
3 and an a. If I factor 3 out of 3a squared, that leaves me just a minus 9, I believe.
Yeah.
So this is going to be 3a equals 0, so a equals 0. And then a minus 9 equals 0, so a equals 9. So those are my solutions. Anything else? Olivia, who doesn't understand any of this, who just copies down the answers.
I really do understand.
Okay, tell me. Talk to me.
34.
34. Can you tell me what 34 says, please?
5t squared minus
5t squared.
minus 5t plus 15t squared.
Is it equal to 0 or anything?
Oh yeah.
It is? Okay. Did I write that appropriate?
Yeah.
Alright, I do have like terms up there. So I'm going to say that I have 20t squared minus 5t. Is that okay as the first thing? Combine like terms? What do I have in common between both of these that I can factor out?
5t.
A 5 and a t. Sweet. And that leaves me 4t minus 1 equals 0. So this is going to say 5t is equal to 0, so t equals 0. 4t minus 1 equals 0. So add 1 divided by 4, so t equals 1 over 4. Okay. Anything else you'd like to go over?
Yeah,
35. What does it say? Uh-huh. Equals 4x, just like that?
Yep.
All right, I'm going to move the 4x over by subtracting it. Is that okay so far? Factor out an x from both. Okay. Can I factor this? Is that the difference of two squares?
Oh yeah.
So is that x plus 2x minus 2?
Mhm.
Come on, baby, catch up with me. So, we haven't talked about this yet, but this, raised to the third power, falls under the fundamental theorem of algebra, which means you have up to 3 roots, or 3 times it crosses the x-axis. So this would cross the x-axis at x equals 0, x equals negative 2, x equals positive 2, because it's cubed. Yep, this graph looks like this, and it somehow does that. Okay, and then there's like this or something. That's what it kind of looks like. Anything else?
Can you do number 24?
2, 4? Yeah. What does 24 say?
3x squared plus 15x
Plus 15x? And then what?
plus 18.
Plus 18. Do I have it written down correctly? Is it equal to 0, or are we just factoring it? Just factor it? Okay, so it looks like I have a common factor of 3 out front. Do you agree with that? And then the factors of 6 that add to 5 are 2 and 3. And we're done. Waiting.
Wouldn't it be like a parenthesis 3x plus 9 plus 9, another parenthesis with x plus 2? Because
So you're talking, did you factor this out?
yeah,
That was first? Who am I talking to? Okay. So, Clay, no, did you factor the 3 out first on these? So you,
I just put the 3x.
I got you. So you went like this, like that. Cool. You're gonna get the same answer. This right here would have a greatest common factor. So where you at?
Is that 3x plus 9?
So you can factor a 3 out of that, and then you have an x plus. So gets the same answer. Anything else? Going once? Going twice? All right, make sure your names are on those, and anything else you might be handed on, make sure your names are on it, and pass it forward, please. And I'm going to enjoy a donut or two. Did you spit on these? It's okay if you did. Homework. And then coming back out to y'all. Remember, you had multiple homework assignments in here, so might have to go through it and check it. Me too. What's for lunch?
Fried rice, dog.
Fried rice?
Awesome.
Okay.
No,
Fried rice. Thanks, brother. All right. We ready? Set. All right, I'm gonna mess with Olivia as soon as she comes in. So go with me on this, okay? These are terms I want to hear you all say. Oh my gosh, that totally makes factoring totally easy, okay?
Yeah.
That clears up everything. Got it? You with me on this?
Those are so good.
Dude, got a key to my heart, buddy. All right. So you might have done factoring in previous classes. You might have done something called the dream method. I know that West Middle School sometimes offers the dream method. So anyhow, never mind. You might have done something called factoring by grouping. And that's another way. And there's all these other sorts of ways. There's one that's the diamond method, one's called the box method. I'm not a big fan of either of those. I like the factor by grouping. I also like the factor by the dream method. They're both similar. But the problem is if you continuously rely on those and you're not seeing the shortcuts and you don't have the confidence, I'd say if you have a lead coefficient that's a number other than 1 and a C value that's a larger value where you're trying to figure out the number of, by multiplying those together, I'd say it's okay to do by grouping or the dream method. But if you had something just as simple as x squared plus 7x plus 12, if you're not seeing x plus 3, x plus 4, you're going to spend an awful lot of time on it. And if you were to take this course, and so how many of you are sophomores in here? Okay. So as a sophomore, you technically could get to AP Calc as a senior, which is awesome. If you are a junior in this class, that's fine. Doesn't mean you'll never get to calculus. But calculus in college, though it's the same content, you're not bound by an AP exam. Okay, so they write the AP exam to, one, have certain things in place that make sure you're quick at them. In college, sometimes you're just going to be given, if you had Calc, so when you're in college, you have Calc A, Calc B, Calc C, or they call it Calc 1, Calc 2, Calc 3. Just depends where you go. They're 1 semester courses. Normally, calculus is a 4 credit hour class, so that's a little bit larger class than a 3 credit. Meets more often. You normally will have that class Monday, Wednesday, Friday for about an hour, or some of you might elect to have it on Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday, which means you meet for 90 minutes. I would say once you get to college, don't try and cram calc into 2 days. Okay? Try and cram it in. Try and do it in a 3-day thing. If they offer a 4-day, go for that. I think it's just better. If you had it over 4 days, you're going to have baby steps, that's just my personal opinion. There's other classes you can get away with having on Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday, but don't do it with the calc. Okay, so as I came around the room, some of you had made comments saying, "Hey, I don't get this." Well, I understand. Meet with me, and we can definitely go over stuff. Okay. I'm not really available before school, but I am available after school if that works for you, if you're not off one of my periods. You have my number. Send me a text throughout the day saying, "Hey, can I come in today after school?" That way I know. But let me know who you are. I don't have numbers memorized. My offs are 1st, 2nd, 4th, and 7th. All right. So the first thing as far as factoring goes, there's just looking for our greatest common factor. So if we look at problem number 1, 6 is the same thing as 3 times 2, agreed? X to the third is x being multiplied, and then 3x squared is just 3xx. So on this problem, you could factor a 3x squared out of both. That would leave you an x plus a 1, and that doesn't factor any further. Okay, the greatest common factor is the most stuff that you factor out. Problem number 2, yeah? Because first time teaching this, so I forget to put stuff. There you go. So 3x squared plus, and then times 2x plus 1. If I go 3x squared times 2x, I get 6x to the third. If I go 3x squared plus 1, or times 1, I get 3x squared. Second problem, what can I factor out of both? 5 and an A. If I factor a 5a out, I'm left with an a minus a 2. Is that right? Did I do that correctly? All right. Let's see, is there anything more on this page? I said moron. Sorry. All right. So this one, we have A's and B's. Looks like we have A's and B's on everything. What's the maximum numerical value that I could factor out of each? So 4 goes into 12, 4 goes into 16, 4 goes into 8. Can I do anything bigger than 4? Is that it?
4AB.
4, and then I have A to the first, A to the second, A, so I can factor an A out. I have B to the second, B and B, so I can factor a B out. Does that make sense so far? If I factor a 4AB out of 12AB squared, if I factor 4 out of 12, what do I have left? 3. If I factor an A out of A, I can take it out. And are there any letters left in there? A B? Why is the B left in there? B squared, good. And then subtraction sign comes along. If I factor 4 out of 16, I'm left with 4. I have an A. Where's the B? Well, I factored out front already. And then If I factor a 4 out of 8, what do I have left? 2. Is there any A's and B's left with that?
No.
As far as that question goes, it's probably done. Let's see. I could multiply 2 times. So do I have factors of 6 that would add to negative 4? And I can't think of any off the top of my head. Factors of 6 are 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. Agree? There's no way I can make those, even if one's positive, one's negative, get up to negative 4. So can I move on?
Yep.
All right. Let's change to a blue. All right. One thing I want you to add before we start, will you put a parenthesis right there? I made an error. Didn't type it. Okay. So then there's some where we can factor out a binomial. Okay, binomial on the first one would be like x plus 3. So if I could factor that out of both of them, then if I factor that out of here, I'm left with 3x. Then I'm left with a plus 2 as well. Does that make sense? Now I just walk in that one.
Yep.
And that's the skill you're going to see if you learn the grouping method. What can I factor out on the second one?
X minus 1.
Okay. Is there anything left that I can factor out?
5.
5. And that's it right there. So didn't that bring everything together on factoring? It's all done? Isn't that so much easier to work with?
So much easier. Yeah.
So, I know. Like, you're going to be getting homework done like within 20 seconds. It's incredible. And I mean, all it is just going through those first couple of steps. You got that? It's done. Oh, Olivia came back. I guess you have to watch the video to get the easy stuff. All right. I'm not gonna watch the video. It's stupid. It's stupid. I hate
No,
this
it's just like
teacher.
one of
This teacher's crazy. Sweet. So you get the jokes
I'm
like
subscribed. I like all of them.
you cry.
I'm forward.
Yes, you cried.
I'm definitely fast.
I cried. They were just too
I'll just skip through the stuff.
You want to hear it?
Let's go to Sakamoto. Well, like, no, I skip through the stuff, like the videos at Sakamoto. Skip through stuff I don't like to
more
hear.
difficult than it needed to be. And I was really annoyed.
I'm exposing Sakamoto's teaching.
Like the
Gotcha.
A's.
All right. Problem number 6. What can I factor out of both?
X minus 5.
X minus 5. And then the little gotcha part on this is we're leaving you at that. If you get to that point, you probably will get a 1 out of 3 on that type of problem. Because of what?
It's a perfect square.
Yeah, I have the difference of 2 squares. X squared minus 9 does indeed break down. So I get x minus 5. Bless you. X plus 3 and x minus 3. Of course, you could add it as x minus 3, x plus 3. It doesn't matter. Is that okay?
Yep.
All right. The last one. Now, last one makes me want to barf a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now,
Yummy.
so I'm just going to put this. Is that okay? And then once I'm done with my problem, I'm going to put x minus 1 back in. So if I were to factor this green one, the factors of 24, negative 24 that add to that would be x minus 8 and x plus 3. Do you hear that? Negative 8 times 3 is negative 24. Negative 8 plus 3 is negative 5. Now, I got rid of the x minus 1 originally, so now I'm going to put that back in. So I kind of took this out for right now to factor it. So where I have x, I'm going to plug that back in. Is that okay? Like terms now. Like terms here. Done. Okay. That's kind of a nasty kind of problem. I'm not a big fan of it. I'm a big fan of this problem because in calculus, you will have something called a U substitution when you're integrating by parts. And that's a really good preliminary look at a U substitution in a real basic sense. If you don't understand U substitution, don't worry, you got a couple years before you take calc. Can I move on?
Yep.
All right, so how do we factor when there's a leading coefficient, okay? So the leading coefficient, that's kind of where it's harder to do it in your head when you have ax squared, where your a value in front of your x squared is a number other than 1. Okay? So I didn't have anything there. Can I move on? I think that was all on your sheet. All right. So first thing you do anytime you start factoring these, take a look at letter A. Is there a greatest common factor I can factor out of all three terms? No. Next step, we're going to do this. We're going to say, hey, you know what? We're going to multiply these together to get 15. So I'm going to figure out the factors of 15 that have to add up to -8. So most of you should start seeing that as -3 and -5. Why did I make them both negative? So if I add negatives together, I get more negative. And when I multiply those factors together, I become positive. Does that make sense? So here's the grouping method. And again, if you see this quicker, that's great. But if you have to do it by grouping because you're not seeing it as fast, you're going to do it this way. What did I just kind of do? Did I split apart the middle?
Yep.
If I combine -3x and -5x back together, do I get back to -8x?
Yep.
Okay, and then all you do with the grouping method is, okay, looking for my first two. What do I have in common between those two? 3 and an x, and I'm left with an x minus 1. Agree?
Yep.
This sign always has to match. What can I factor out of both of those?
5.
5, and it's a -5, so I factor a -5, it switches the sign. All right, and then I have x minus 1. If I factor an x minus 1 out of both of those, what do I have left? 3x minus 5, right? Done. It's factored.
Do we have to do that?
No, well, if you get the right answer, yes. If you don't get the right answer, try it. If you see it in your head, go for it. So again, there's other ways of going through it. Again, you want to see it quicker, but sometimes that lead coefficient is not a 1. Sometimes that is a good go-to to do. It's called the factor by grouping method. Okay? What method do you know? You don't know any of them?
No, the normal method. I don't know.
All right, so are you able to factor that? You were able to factor that? Perfect. You're ahead of the curve. Good job. So, what?
So you can either do that, or you can just stick with x minus 2 and x minus 5.
Do what?
You can either do that as just the first time you factored it.
Yeah, well, what you have to realize once you're doing that is this 3x has to show up someplace. So if your method is getting that, then awesome. But again, factoring is a tougher concept. A lot of students have a hard time if you're visualizing in your head, you could see it. Please, by all means, continue to build that skill. Okay? If you need to resort back to these saying, that lead coefficient isn't 1, so I have to see it this way by grouping. And the grouping takes place right here. That's the grouping part. Okay? And then you're factoring out a binomial from each of those. All right, so, again, if you do this, some of you might see, oh, okay, I know I'm going to have 7x. I mean, basically, your answer is going to come down to 7x and x. How do I know it's 7x and x? Well, 7's a prime number, so it's 7 times 1. It's the only way I can get to 7. So I know that. Other things, by looking at this problem, you can say, hey, I know I have to have positive and positive. And some of you might see this quickly, that the only way you're going to get a 3, where's that?
21 and 1.
21 and 1? Or I could realize I have a 3 and a 1 right there. Why did I skip all of that? This one made it easy because this is prime and this is prime. Okay? Now, if some of you are like, dude, where did that whole stuff just go? Okay, so if you're not able to see it right away, that's fine. So realize you're going to have 7x squared. Multiply that together, gives me 21. So I know I have plus 3x plus 7x plus 3. Okay? You could have the 7x and then the 3x second. Doesn't matter. What do you have in common here? Oh wait, did I goof up? I think I goofed.
Yeah, you goofed up.
Yeah.
Where'd I goof?
X.
Do what?
21
It has to be 21 and 1.
Yeah.
It is 21 and 1.
Yeah, but then you reduce it down and it's right. X plus 3 and 7. Just 7x.
All right, 21 and 1. So 7x squared plus 21x plus x plus 3.
Yeah.
That what you did? Okay, what do you have in common here? 7x. So that'll become an x plus 3. Hey, look at that. It's starting to trend. I can't factor anything out here, so it's just a plus 1. That doesn't change. So here's my group, boom. And then 7x plus 1 was left over. Done. It worked. Move on. All right, letter C. Is there a common factor? No. So here's the problem. Am I going to use a 6x and an x, or am I going to do a 2x and a 3x? You might be right. I don't know, though. So I'm going to do this. 6 times 15 is 90. Did I do that right? Factors of 90 are 1 and 90, 2 and 45, 3 and 30, 4, 5, and let's see, 18, 10 and 9, thank you. 10 and 9 are the two that work. They're both going to have to be negative. How do I know they're negative? Because a negative times a negative is a positive. So if I do 6x squared minus 10x minus 9x plus 15, so I factor out, looks like on that one I could factor out a 2x, and that leaves me 3x minus 5. I can factor out, remember that sign has to come down, a 3, and that gives me a 3x, and it's a negative because I factor a negative 3 out. And so then your answer is 3x minus 5 and 2x minus 3. And again, some of you might have seen it right away saying, I know it has to be a 2x and a 3x, but there's no guarantee that it has to be that. It could be a 6x and an x. Okay? And the reason I'm saying a 6x and an x, 6x times x is 6x squared. 3x and 2x multiplied together is 2x squared, or 6x squared as well. Okay, no greatest common factor on the last one. Things that you definitely should know about this problem is I'm going to have both be in positive. Agree? Does everyone feel comfortable how I know that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. So again, do I know that it's going to be a 2x and a 2x, or is it going to be a 4x and an x? I don't know right off the top of my head. If I multiply those together, I get positive 48. The factors of 48, 1 and 48, 2 and 24, 3 and what? 3 and 1, 16. It's going to be 3 and 16, both positive. Agree?
Yeah.
So if you do this, you just plug these in whatever order you want. So you have the 4x squared that comes along, 3x plus 16x plus 12. I do have an x I can factor out, so I have 4x plus 3. If I factor that, that plus comes along. Factor out a 4. That's 4x plus 3 there. So my answer is 4x plus 3 and x plus 4. Some of you might have seen that quicker, but that was one that a lot of people might have thought, oh, it's got to be 2x and 2x. But look what it came out to. It came out to 4x and x. Unlike the last one, that was the factors of 6, the smaller factors. Are we okay? All right. Last of it. Can I factor 3 out of all 3 terms?
Yep.
So things that I will know on this one, I know I'm going to have definitely 3x and x. How do I know that I have 3x and x? Because the only way to get to 3x squared by breaking it apart.
Kind of the last one.
Yeah, you brought them. All right. I also know that my signs are both going to be negative. Agree there? So then you might start thinking, okay, what are my factors that are going to get to me to get to that negative 17? Let's see, 4 and 6, 3 and 8, 2 and 12, 1 and 24, I just list them all? Not seeing it right away. It's what? 1 and 8? 9 and 8. Got you. 3 and 8. Let's see if I'm going to 3 here, 8 here. Let's see, is that going to work? Negative 8x, negative 9. Yep, that works. Now, you just told me that it was negative or 9 and 8. Which I think you're, so that's by going together. So you have the 9 times 8 both being negative. That would add up to this. I totally agree with you. Now here's the catch on that. How can I go quicker from here to here? Well, you know that I can't have the 9 here because you'd have a common factor of a 3. So that means the 8 has to go here. And that's why the 3 goes there. Okay? So what I basically did is I said, I can't. So I was just breaking down the 24 because I know that 3 times 8 gives me the 24. But if you went your way, which is fine, I have 3x squared minus 9x minus 8x plus 24. I don't really need that right there. I can factor out a 3x from both. Boom, that goes. And then that negative has to come down here. Bring in an 8. So I get 8. Negatives coming out. So you have that. X minus 3 is there. 3x minus 8 is right there. It's done. Last problem, how would I get 8x squared? Is it 8x times x or is it 2x times 4? I don't know. This might be one I would jump right to say, you know what, I'm going to multiply those together. I know things that I know definitely right now is they're both terms are positive because everything's positive in there. And what's 8 times 15?
120.
120. So the factors of 120 both being positive. You're not in Algebra 1, so you don't have to go 1 times 120 and 2 times 60. Okay, start thinking bigger. So, you know, I don't know, what is it, 5 times what? Let's see, 5 times 26? 5 times 26 totally works. Oh, wait, no, 5.
24.
It's 5 times 24?
20 and 6.
20 and 6.
20 and 6. There we go. Those will work, both being positive. And Olivia's upset again. Sorry.
No, I'm not. Yes, you are. I'm great. Are you? Amazing.
All right, so we got that. Agree? What do I factor out here? 4x. 2x plus 5. Then I can factor out a positive 3. 2x plus 5. And so I get 2x plus 5 as one of my factors because I had that twice, and then 4x plus 3 is the other one. Done. How far am I?
Two more slides.
2 more.
Oh, wait.
Yep. Ready? I'm cranking. I'm going. All right. Common factor. Common factor. What do I have as a common factor on all 3 of these terms right here?
3x.
Thank you.
Woo!
That leaves me x squared minus 2x plus 1. So that's going to break up to x minus 1, x minus 1. Agree? I'm not done yet. Stop packing up. Okay, this one I can factor a 5 out of everything, so I get left with 5x squared minus 3x minus 2. Okay, so this 5 needs to come down. It's part of the ride. It looks like I'm going to have alternating signs. One's positive, one's negative. How do I know that? Because that's negative. So the factors of negative 10 that add to 3. 5 and 2. Good. So I'm just going to do this. 5x squared minus 5x plus 2x minus 2. I can factor out a 5x here. And that leaves me x minus 1. Factor out a 2 here. X minus 1. So x minus 1 goes there. 5x plus 2 goes there. Don't forget your greatest common factor of 5, the little brother that forgot to come along for the ride. Okay? So, I have done quite a bit of factoring. The only thing that I have missed out on is what happens if this was equal to 0. You'd set this equal to 0 and solve it. Okay? So, 5g. 5g is for you tonight, and it's a front, back, front. So 5g,
collect that?
I did. 5G, it's page 119, 120, 121.
I actually did it once. In this folder.
Yep.
For the first one you grade.
Yeah, it's always the best one.
Yep.
We good? If you need help with factoring, please come see me. 59. Don't forget your phone. Someone bring me mine too.